Now, this might look like a controlled cinematic shoot, but it really wasn't. This was filmed inside a crowded museum doing a live exhibition. I had people constantly walking through frame, reflections everywhere, and lighting that kept changing from car to car. Some areas were too flat, others had harsh overhead hotspots. Not exactly ideal for cinematic work. I couldn't move the cars, couldn't shape the lights, and couldn't lock down the space. So instead of solving everything on set, I knew I'll have to solve a lot of it later in post. And that decision shaped how I shot every single clip. Beyond the technical side, I didn't want this to feel like just a documentation of cars. I wanted it to feel like a mood piece. A lot of my inspiration came from classic automotive commercials and vintage car photography, where the vehicles were treated almost like portraits, very deliberate, very sculptural, very precise. I leaned into slower pacing, controlled movements, and selective emphasis on detail. The curves, chromes, badges, headlights, the design language that gives each car its own personality. I also wanted a slightly nostalgic tone, not overly modern, not hyper sharp, something that feels timeless. For me, and this is just my opinion, cinematic work isn't about how expensive the setup is. It's about where you guide the viewer's attention and how consistent the visual intention feels from shot to shot. So because I knew the environment was very unpredictable and I had no tripod or gimbal, I approached the shoot very differently from a normal controlled setup. Instead of trying to capture everything, I focused on specific shot types that would feel cinematic even in a crowded space. I looked for hero angles first, clean side profiles, front three-quarter views, and low angles that made the cars feel powerful and sculptural. Then I captured detail shots, headlights, emblems, body lines, interior features, because close-ups are more easier to control and they cut together really well in the edit. For camera movements, I kept everything slow and deliberate, mostly gentle pushings and small parallax moves. Even though it was handheld, I treated every move like it was on a slider. I also avoided wide shots with too much background clutter. If the frame felt too busy or distracting, I didn't shoot it because I knew it would break the mood later. Basically, I was shooting for the edit and the grade, not just for coverage. Most of the cinematic polish actually happened in Nuke, and don't worry, it wasn't heavy VFX, but just a lot of subtle corrective work that adds up. The first step was stabilization, but not the typical full stabilize. I like to partially stabilize shots, then reintroduce a controlled, gentle motion. Something that keeps the image feeling intentional without becoming too robotic. Next was cleanup. Museums are full of distractions, reflections, bright hotspots, background movements. So I use masks and secondary corrections to reduce visual noise and guide the attention back to the cars. In several shots, I isolated specific region, like the body panels or headlights, and treated them separately from the background. That let me shape contrast and exposure locally instead of pushing the whole frame. For color, I didn't just apply a global grade. I built layered corrections, balancing the base image first, then adding selective warmth to highlight and slightly cooler tones to the environment. That separation helped the subject pop without looking too artificial. I also controlled highlight roll-off quite carefully, especially on chrome and paint reflections. Cars have a lot of specular response, and if you don't manage that, I feel they clip and lose detail very quickly. Now, none of these changes are dramatic on their own, but stacked together, they shift the image from documentary to cinematic. It's less about adding effects, in my opinion, and more about removing distractions and shaping focus. When I was done with the individual shots and got into the edits, the goal wasn't just to assemble shots, it was to give each car a sense of presence. I didn't want this to feel like a fast montage. I wanted each vehicle to feel introduced, almost like a character entrance. Music played a big role too. I picked a track with a steady, nostalgic tone. Nothing too overly aggressive, so the edit could feel smooth and reflective rather than energy and hype. Another thing I paid attention to was the visual flow, alternating between wide, medium, and close detailed shots. If you stack too many similar framings back to back, the sequence starts to feel a little flat. And honestly, I treat editing like invincible cinematography. A good editing can create intention and mood even if the original shooting conditions weren't perfect. Looking back, there are definitely things I would improve next time. For one, I would capture more through establishing shots to help ground the space before going into details. I focused heavily on hero and close shots, which kind of works, but a bit more environmental context would have strengthened the story. I'll probably also shoot a few alternative motion passes per car, just to give myself more editorial flexibility later. Every project like this is part experiment, part execution, and I try to treat each as a learning path forward. Now, if you are interested, I can break down one of these shots step by step in Nuke. Node by node, step by step, you get to see everything, and I get to show you the full correction stack in detail. I'll be sharing more filmmaking and VFX breakdowns like this. Both the creative decisions and the technical workflows behind this shot is something that I've always loved to share. So if that's kind of your thing, stick around and let me know which shot you want me to break down next time. Bye.